I am joined for a chat by Stella Sloane, who's lecturer at Shannon College of Hotel Management, of course part of University of Galway, and Deirdre Ball, Communication Liaison Officer and Employment Coach with Employability Clare. Ladies, a very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for coming in for a chat. Stella, can you talk to us a little bit about your role as lecturer at the college, how long you've been working there, and what subjects or areas you teach and what you enjoy most about it?
Sure. I suppose the main thing is I love working with young people. I mean, certainly that has been a huge advantage, and we're very blessed. We have some fantastic students in Shannon, and I have been there since 2001 when I started, because I very much come from a hotel background. I grew up in East Cork near Ballymaloe House, and I started working in various other properties, 5-star properties around Ireland and in the UK, and then I joined Shannon. A part-time position came up in during that time, and then a full-time position came up, and I joined them then in 2001. And I suppose my main area would be around rooms and accommodation services and accommodation management, around standards and room design and all of that. And I suppose I loved bringing all of that to the students and the importance of it, particularly standards, and bring it when you see them coming in at the beginning and then you see them graduate. It's very, very exciting to see that.
The positive impact you've had on them.
Yeah, well, not just me now. I have great colleagues, and I work with great people that have been there quite a while, like myself, and also Adrian Silver is our head of school. Philip Smith was the head of school for a long time when I had started, and he was with us for quite a while of my time there as well. And since we've joined the university, it's been a huge bonus to us in Shannon, and they've been fantastic about community engagement and getting involved in all things, so that's been really beneficial to me now in my role. So I would have mainly worked around rooms and accommodation and the practical side of things, and that would be my area. Also business skills development, preparing students for placement, around interview skills, all of those life skills, I suppose, that are very important. Since, I suppose, when we'll talk about the rest in a moment, we're very much now involved in student volunteering, community engagement, which is wonderful, and I would be working with Orla Cullinan on skills for work life with that, and we bring students out to various places like Carrigorn and Clare Haven, and Ennis Tidy Towns, who do great work, and I've since joined Ennis Tidy Towns myself, having got involved in that, so they do amazing work around the town, and I love to help out with that as well. So I suppose since everything has happened, this has allowed me to engage in other things as well and bring students along on that journey as well, which is really important.
And it sounds like you're making them more, I guess, fully rounded, and that the college doesn't just prepare students for management roles, but people-centred leadership within the hospitality industry.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's what we like to see. It's very, very important, because hotels, as you can appreciate now, aren't just about making it luxurious and all. It's all about well-being. It's all about, making the guests feel welcome, but also making them feel at home. But it's very important to us that our students are well-rounded. Even students that have worked with me last year on volunteering, they're in the UK now in placement and some of the beautiful properties there, but are also working with the homeless. Now, I'm not saying that happened through their time in Shannon, but it certainly hopefully might have contributed to them wanting to engage with the community and so on.
Stella, would you mind speaking to us or sharing your personal journey in terms of your time away from work and what led to that?
Keeping fit and all of that was very important to me in my life, and having worked in hotels, I would have run through various floors over the years, and I didn't need to worry too much about going to the gym or keeping myself fit. And then when I started in Shannon, I realised that I need to be careful here, because while you're very active, you can be active in a different way, as opposed to being in hotels and running through floors and so on. So I was always kind of good to go for a run or walking and all, swimming and all of that. And then I decided I'd get involved in cycling. It was something that I kind of had an interest in, and I joined the Clare Ladies Cycling Club, which I'm sure you're well aware of here, and the great work that they do. And I joined them, and it was fantastic, because I got to know a whole new group of ladies. We all connected very well, and I learned how to cycle properly from the point of view of the safety, the health and safety, the wearing of the helmet, which I'll talk about later, probably did save my life. And it was really great to be part of a club that took safety so important, but having fun as well. And And I got involved in a lot of sportives as a result, like the Burren, a Tour de Burren, the Ring of Kerry, and all those various cycles. And then I decided I'd go on and I'd do the Wicklow 200. Which I did in 2015, and I suppose I could see a lot of injuries that happened to people on that, people with broken collarbones and so on. And there's a lot of climbing in that, and I liked climbing. I liked doing that side of it. Coming down the other side might not have always worked very well. I've had my few falls over the years, but so in 2016 I did it again. I said, sure, I'll go back and do it again. And I suppose that's really where this brings me to my story of where it all went a little bit wrong.
Yeah, tell us what went wrong and how wrong did it go?
Okay, well, it was a very wet morning. We'll start with that, and a very dark morning. And I headed off, my husband and my young child of 4 at the time, our only child, and they were staying in we were all staying in Greystones, and I headed off at 6 a.m. on my own. There wasn't anyone else in the club that were going to be doing it at the time. It was an odd time of year as well. People were on holidays and so on. But I decided I'd go off and do it anyway. And I remember, I suppose, up to the first 80 kilometres, and I can recall that. But after that, all I can remember is waking up in Beaumont Hospital. And what had happened is I had come off on one of the downhills. There were some very very sharp downhills, almost like coming down the side of the wall. And I must have come off and crashed. And there was a car coming the other way, but the car didn't hit me, to my knowledge. But when I was found, they had said that the back of my helmet was completely crushed, and they were going to bring me to Tella, and they rang my husband straight away, because when you wear the bib, you put your contact details on the back, and that's so important for everybody to know, because he was contacted immediately, and then they said, we'll bring me to St. Vincent's, and then when they realised that it looked like I had a brain injury, they brought me to Beaumont, and that's where I had a brain bleed, and collapsed lung, and then scaphoid was broken, and my collarbone. So I suppose it was all of that and everything else in between that was the beginning of my journey then.
How lengthy was that journey? Can you explain the challenges you faced when considering a return to employment, and how Headway, Employability Clare, and also Shannon College supported you during that period, which must have been difficult? Yeah,
very difficult. And I was very keen from day one in Beaumont. I can even hear myself saying it. I really need to get back to work. I need to get back to work, because I've always loved my work. I've always worked all my life, and it was very important to me. And I can still remember going back to the consultant 3 months later, and he said, "You love your work, don't you?" Because you were the one. He said, "Are you back at work yet?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Well, there you go." But the university were fantastic and so supportive of me getting back, and my job was always there. Philip Smith, who was the head of school at the time, and Adrian Silver was deputy head, and Adrian is head of school now. They were all fantastic, encouraged me to get back. HR with the university were constantly, not constantly, but checking in on me, letting me know that my job was there, everything was secure, and just to give me time. But I knew my heart of hearts it was going to take time. So Niall Pender, who was the consultant in Dublin, he recommended Headway in Limerick. When he was doing all these various tests on me, and he said that they would be fantastic to give you, support. And Julie, they did, Richie Reeves and Rella and all the people there. And then they eventually then said, look, employability is who you need to talk to, because employability, as it says in it, it's the ability to employ and get you back into the workplace again. And they put me in touch with the Clare branch, and that really is where my journey began then with Deirdre and all of the great people in employability and the great work that they do.
So you had a lot of support there and reassurance from the various parties as to, security of tenure and all of that. Yeah. Were they flexible as well in terms of when you came back, maybe doing fewer hours, maybe letting you go home when you needed? And how did that work in the gradual increase in hours and responsibilities? How did that help in terms of you transitioning fully back into the workplace?
Yeah, very good. Well, when I was in discussion with them, and I suppose the thinking was that I'd eventually get back to full time and all of that. But, my husband reminded me every so often, and he was obviously, Finian, a very important part of my life, and, reminding me that, look, I don't think you'll be full time, I think you'll just have to go back very gradually and see how it works. So when Deirdre my beacon of light, got involved through employability, she sort of advised me and said, now Stella, you may not be able to do what you did before, but maybe you need to reinvent yourself. So I sort of looked at Deirdre and I said, reinvent myself at this stage of my life, I'm not so sure. So it was very difficult because I was going back into the same workplace, which was different for Deirdre as well, where she would be, employability could be finding work for people in other areas, but I was within the college going back to my old place of work, which probably brought its own challenges because I wasn't able to probably get back to where I was before. I wasn't. And I wasn't able to teach the areas that I was involved in. So I had to look at other areas, as we said, to reinvent myself. And the college were very supportive of that. And it was very much saying, look, give it the time, and work through it, and we'll see what happens. And yes, they were very flexible around it, because fatigue is a terrible issue with a brain injury, and nobody ever really understands it until you go through it. It's beyond tiredness,
And Deirdre, can you talk to us about how Employability Clare work with the likes of Shannon College of Hotel Management, and what it means to you to see this kind of full circle moment, supporting individuals into employment while also educating future hospitality managers?
We've created a fantastic partnership, because initially when Stella came into the service, really what she needed was just that kind of guidance, because Stella, it wouldn't have worked for Stella if she didn't want to go back to work, and she really wanted to go back to work, and she had a fantastic supportive employer. And she had already proven how many years of being in employment. So it was really creating the space for her to go back and say, I'm here and I need a little bit of support in X, Y and Z. And I suppose that's where the conversation would have started, when I met and we had that meeting with Philip at the time, who was the head of the college, and since is now Adrian. And on that day, the four of us sat around and talked about that and how it was going to work. And Stella often reminds me that I actually was asking the employer more how they were than her on the day, and we make a laugh out of it, because we had spent so much time talking to each other in our own one-to-one meetings, because we're individualised approach. That's what we do. Every employment coach in Employability Clare, it's a one-on-one conversation, and we're confidential, and it's all about that person. But when I sit opposite an employer, I'm asking them, how are ye as well? Because if both aren't on board, it's not going to work. And I knew from that very first meeting that whatever Stella needed, they were going to try and provide, because she's such a valuable part of the college and has been for years. So I suppose what happened then is, as time went on and Stella went back on very small hours, and we were only chatting about this the other day, she started back on 6 hours, 2 days a week.
That's right.
And it was really, really slow. And now it's gone to 2.5 days a week. The same things are still for you, still, aren't they? The tiredness, it's still there, and it will always be there.
Yeah.
And there'll always be times where, Stella, you're going to need more time to get ready for, say, classes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you've been given that time to allow yourself to get there, and that's what it's all about. Everyone's different, and everyone needs that type of accommodation. Once you find the accommodation, and once you have an employer on board, it can be plain sailing after that. So I suppose what's developed since then between myself and Stella was, so that was I suppose I should say 2019 was when Stella registered with us. In 2020 was the transition back to employment. And then around 2022, myself and Stella started talking to each other about, well, how can we further teach this, what we've learned between each other. And Stella is in front of future managers of the hospitality industry every day. And Stella has always been open with her students about how she returned back to work, the time that she had off and the time that she was coming back. And I loved that kind of freshness, because I loved the fact that Stella wanted to tell her students the story. And I thought, well, if you're ready to tell that story, why doesn't employability come in and start presenting to the first year students? And that's what we started. It was Stella, and it was Orla Cullen and ourselves in employability. And Karen Kelleher, she has been involved in presentations. She's an IPS person within our organisation. And Nivo Milan is an employment coach, and she's recently been doing the presentations as well. And what we're trying to say to the future managers of hospitality, look at all the accommodations that you might need to give a person, whether there be a colleague, a future kind of employee, or a guest, a customer, and see how simple sometimes accommodations can be. They don't have to be big, massive changes in your business. Like, it's not, some disabilities are not visible. And the majority of them are not visible. So you always need to be prepared. Whether if you're in a customer-facing business, you always have to be prepared for somebody needing that little bit of accommodation.
The understanding, isn't it?
And the understanding.
Just the final minute that's left to us, Stella.
Yeah.
To finish, what message would you like future hospitality managers to take from your story about supporting colleagues with disabilities, be they visible or invisible, as Deirdre mentioned?
It's so important. You have to go through it to know it and to live it, and to have the patience first of all. Empathy is really important. We would always influence empathy with students, but certainly around the whole area of disability, and giving people a chance, because all I ever wanted was a chance, an opportunity to get back, and I'm extremely grateful that I have been allowed and given that opportunity, and very appreciative of all that Employability and Headway and all have done for me, and the university and so on, and the college. But it's just have the patience, give people the time, and be as understanding as you can, because it's small steps, but you do get there in the end. May not be the same, it'll be different, but give them the opportunity.